just so you can focus before I go. If something happens to us after we get off this live, in the meantime, I just want you to know I have dropped paperwork, documents, information off to everybody around the world, and I'm telling all of you insurance holders that are watching this right now, if we are dead, there is no point for you to sit on that information. Do you hear me? No point.
Welcome back to Grab Your Brew.
If you're new, welcome. Please like and subscribe.
Week 3 of the Diddy trials, basically, and the judge is expecting the 6 to 8 week original anticipation date to wrap up much sooner due to being ahead of schedule.
So grab your brew and join us, and we're going to go through week 3 of the Diddy trials. So far, we've covered the abuse to Cassie and the people around her, such as Kid Cudi, with his house getting broken into, his dog being abused, and a Molotov cocktail bomb in his car. A lot of people are asking what this has to do with racketeering and trafficking.
But it has a lot. If they can get him on the abuse and the kidnapping alone, that's 15 years. And kidnapping also comes under the RICO Act. So again, that alone is adding all the stuff that is yet to come. Just that alone, that one part is involving racketeering. But keep watching and we will explain. And it is important to know that Diddy also has 63 civil lawsuits alone. That is not tied into this at all. So there's a lot of like hearsay on a lot of different things getting mixed up with this federal case. We're covering the federal case. We may throw some of the other stuff in there, but if we do catch some stuff going on with the civil lawsuits, which currently aren't going into court, then we'll mention that it is a civil suit. But as of right now, we're covering the federal case.
Yeah, it's although obviously we've covered the domestic violence against Cassie, there's also the abuse to employees as well. So let's take a look at this clip.
The Inner City Press here at the Southern District of New York Courthouse. Today, Wednesday, May 28th, 2025, we're going in for what would be day 11, I believe, of the Sean Combs trial. Yesterday, there was a single witness, Capricorn Clark. She testified at great length about kidnapping to Kid Cudi's house, in which she described Sean Combs with a gun in the car, and also 5 grueling days of lie detector tests taken in a then empty building on Broadway in Manhattan, in which a unnamed man the size of 2 linebackers said if he didn't pass the lie detector test. This was a lie detector test about apparently stealing the missing jewelry from Jacob the jeweler after a white party in the Hamptons. It's all coming together. Apparently she passed, but then she got repeatedly fired and then went back with Combs Enterprises. That was sort of came up on like, why'd you go back? And she's, she had a tale of woe, broke down. The judge had kept the jury later than usual so they could get through the day. Now, upcoming today, LAPD, LAFD, or FDLA, I guess it would be, Jimenez, the investigator of the fire at Cudi's car. There's a lot of back and forth about this female DNA and how they can ask questions about it. I have to say, I'm going to toot Inner City Press's horn. We did this filing in week 1, the Thursday of week 1, saying nothing was going into the docket. And now it is. They put belatedly a number of emails from like 2 weeks ago. But now we're getting kind of in real time the arguments that are being made. And it's appreciated. It helps with the coverage, and it also helps people to know why it is that some things get excluded and why some things get in. Also today, Mia, described as another victim of Sean Combs, sexual victim. So the pieces are there. The pieces are coming together. We're covering it extremely closely. We put out...
Here's what happened on day 10 of the Diddy trial. Capricorn Clark, Diddy's former executive assistant, testified all day today. And she's the 3rd assistant witness, but her testimony was the most explosive. Clark worked for Suge Knight and Death Row Records before Bad Boy. And when Diddy found out on her first day, he said that if anything happened, he would kill her. Diddy also said he didn't like 50 Cent and that he liked guns. Diddy once accused Clark of stealing diamond jewelry. His security locked her in an office and administered a lie detector test. They told her that if she failed, they would throw her in the East River. They took her to the same office and questioned her with a lie detector for 5 days straight. That's kidnapping and a racketeering act. Like the other assistants, Clark set up the rooms for the freak-offs and cleaned them up afterwards. She also witnessed physical abuse. Clark got illegal and prescription drugs for Diddy, and sometimes the prescriptions were made out to her name. That's drug trafficking. Clark said she was paid $65,000 a year and didn't get any meal or rest breaks. She also developed stress-induced alopecia. She complained to Diddy's chef, quit, then returned to work for Sean John and managed Cassie. Diddy controlled everything about Cassie, including her appearance and what opportunities she could take. Diddy found out Cassie was dating Kid Cudi. He showed up at Clark's house with a gun and said they were gonna go kill Kid Cudi. They drove to Kid Cudi's house, but Clark called Cassie and told her not to come because they would be killed. Kid Cudi pulled up to his house, then sped away, and Diddy followed him but couldn't catch him. Diddy then took Clark to a club and told Cassie that he wouldn't let Clark go until Cassie came there, and that if Kid Cudi called the police, he would kill everyone. That's another act of kidnapping. Clark didn't talk to arson investigators when they called to get a statement. Diddy was mad that Clark didn't tell him Cassie was cheating on him, so he fired her. Clark sued for wrongful termination, and Diddy settled with her. Here's what
Imagine working under these circumstances. It's easy to say what you woulda, coulda, shoulda done, but nobody really knows until they're actually in that position.
Especially with him being among Hollywood's elite, and let's face it, plenty of people have gone missing around Diddy. So we'll watch the next clip for an alleged witness list update.
The trial witness list for Diddy's defense has come out, and it is star-studded. Here are just a few names: Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Prince Harry. There's a whole list in the disclosures that's just titled royalty. Mike Myers, Michael B. Jordan, Young Miami, Cuba Gooding Jr., Bishop T.D. Jakes, Daphne Joy, Justin Bieber, Chris Brown, 50 Cent, Travis Scott, Kendrick Lamar, Ty Dolla $ign, Future, Tory Lanez, French Montana, Lil Baby, Meek Mill, Hailey Bieber, Jaden Smith. You've also got listed on there the former Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, some congressmen like Maxine Waters, former mayors like Michael Bloomberg, Rahm Emanuel, Eric Adams, John Kerry, who was the former U.S. Secretary of State, Deval Patrick, former governor of Massachusetts. The list goes on and on. Some of them have attended parties, some of them haven't, some of them are going to be character witnesses, like, oh, here's how, he really is, type of thing.
Then we have the testimony from his ex-stylist, his and Cassie's ex-stylist, now Rihanna's stylist.
So, Nash, they came down and Puff was berating us. As we drove off, we got a phone call.
Objection, Combs Donaldson, the lawyer says.
Judge, new question.
Call from who, AUSA?
Nash, Puff, he told us to stop and he came to the window. He said he'd put her sex tapes on the internet. Puff said he'd send her sex tapes to her parents' jobs and get them fired, that her brother was a bitch and that only he protected her.
AUSA, what did you tell her?
Nash, that Puff is on the sex tapes too. She said he is not. He was taping her with other men.
Again, all this is doing is continuing the humiliation and involving employees during this, sounding very mafia boss rather than professional boss to me.
You can tell that the lawyers are getting a little panicked as they're attempting for a mistrial based on one tiny piece of evidence.
It's a smidgy time. Smidgy. From Kid Cudi's car, there was a glove that the investigators were supposed to run DNA on. They got destroyed.
Because it happens all the time.
All the time. Just happens to go and get destroyed. Even though you can find evidence from 50 years ago on cold cases. But yeah, this just happened to get destroyed. And following is quotes from the court transcripts.
Combs Shapiro, they should have ended with when the fingerprint cards were destroyed, but they asked did he authorise it. There's no way to unring this bell. The only proper remedy here is a mistrial.
AUSA, that's absolutely unwarranted. It was Mr. A, I can't pronounce that name, who was wanted to inquire into the DNA, into the investigation. Your Honour, can I just say that the jurors should not draw any interference from
The destruction of the fingerprint card. Judge, application for mistrial denied.
Denied.
Some of you are here for the gossip and some are here to figure out who is being charged for being a bad guy.
Like Ray J tried to say, yeah, with our Piers Morgan. Failed attempt,
Follow
but
Brit.
tried. Yes, we love our Piers Morgan.
Diddy all the way pretty much up until the arrest. And all I got from that when I hung out with Diddy, and this is word to my mom and kids. He's always inspired me to be great. When I left, I felt like I could do more for my business. I felt like I had more power because I wanted to be more vocal in running my companies and call my wife if we were getting into it and send her flowers. I mean, these are all the things he was instilling to me and all of the young guys around that were inspired and you know, look at him as a mentor. So now these private things that happen when we were around and never even got a chance to see this kind of crazy stuff, it just sounds like this was a private, personal thing that was happening, and now it's starting to become it's diabolical. I mean, if that's the right word, it's chilling and it's scary for a lot of people out there in this business like us who are trying to walk the right path and connect with the right people when there's things that you do when you make bad mistakes. But this is like an overflow of just complete negativity.
So it sounds to me, unless I'm wrong, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you think that there's been a massive overreach here. This is personal behavior between Diddy and Cassie Ventura that we've seen so far, that it doesn't cross the line from where you sit into serious crime under the RICO law, which of course was, you know, intended for mafia members and so on. Do you think that's what we're witnessing here with this case? That this was consensual? It may be freaky, it may be sexually deviant, it may be all these things, but it was apparently consensual behavior and not a crime.
I agree, and there's things that you know we saw in these videos, they were disturbing, and that's not okay, right? But looking at the crimes that he's being charged for, this is where it starts to go overboard, and it's like whoever was mad at the top was really mad, and I think we're here now, and I think it's a flex, because like, what are they trying to get out of this in this court case? Does everybody that's talking about these stories, do they want to see Puffy rot in jail? Is that what we're here for? Because I just think that that's unfair, and just knowing everybody, it just could have been done a different way, and now it's starting to worry me, and I honestly think that Diddy will get out, and I think that there's nothing here. Right? I think they made their point, whatever they were trying to make. Your point is made. Now let Diddy out. Free Diddy.
Wow, you think he's going to walk?
I think so. And I personally think it's going to happen faster than a lot of people think, because I think we're all starting to see what this is. Even if you're on the other side of it, I mean, you know, the justice system is the justice system. Where does this fit in right as opposed to right and wrong? It's off, and I don't like it.
Here's my problem.
And I want to be vocal about it.
Right. So I've met Diddy a couple of times at social functions many years ago, and he was perfectly polite and nice to me, and we had a perfectly civilized conversation. One was an Oscars party, one was an event in London. I have to say, when I watched the video that was leaked of him attacking Cassie Ventura in that hotel corridor, I did think then, well, you're not the person I thought I knew from everything I'd read and heard. You're a very violent person, capable of beating up a woman. That is despicable. And if you're capable of that, and that's just what we saw on a CCTV bit of footage by chance, then what else are you capable of? What do you say to people like me who looked at that and go, well, this guy is a vicious, nasty piece of work?
Listen, I was very hurt when I saw the video. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was very disappointed, and I still am. And my heart goes out to Cassie for me just watching that, right? It's not okay. And there's nothing about that was okay. And I can't say but after that, because that's just what that is. And I feel the same way you feel. But on the top of what we're doing now, and even with the tape being altered, I heard, and they're not going to be able to use it probably in court because it was altered before it was put out, that puts a spin on it. It doesn't put the spin on what he did. But the altered tape, that as opposed to sex trafficking and a RICO, and now it's in this mafia setting, it just doesn't, they don't go together. Diddy all the way pretty much up until the arrest.
Something about him doing this feels kind of strange because, sorry, Ray J, I loved you in Love and Hip Hop, but even from the Kim K videos, we all know that you are a very mediocre actor. And to me, this feels very forced and
Piggybacked off Moesha.
either somebody's telling you to do this or somebody paid you to do this. But we all know you only have a career because of your sister.
It's baffling though, because he was also saying it basically broke his heart seeing that video, but he's defending him.
Yeah.
You're either with or you're against.
He says it shouldn't come with a but then says, but.
He was it was last known that he was on bad terms with Diddy's sons, and shortly after their issues, he was almost killed. Suspicious. However, let's look at the next interview.
This debunks what Ray J said and explains why they are going the way they are within the court.
A Los Angeles police officer and fire arson investigator both took the stand to speak about a 2012 firebombing incident with Kid Cudi's car. Cassie Ventura's former stylist also testified. Investigators said a Molotov cocktail found in Kid Cudi's car appeared to have been used to ignite the car. However, it malfunctioned and didn't explode. However, had it done what it was supposed to, investigators said there would have been extensive damage. An investigator called the fire set inside Kid Cudi's car, quote, a targeted crime. Arson is among the acts listed in the racketeering conspiracy charges against Diddy. Another officer said he and his partner noticed a black Cadillac drive by 2 times as they were investigating the potential arson. They said they ran the plates on the second trip and found that it was registered to Bad Boy Records, which is, of course, Diddy's music label. They also said both Ventura and his former assistant, Capricorn Clark, refused to talk to them about the incident. Diddy's defense team also filed a motion for mistrial today after a fire arson investigator admitted that evidence was destroyed without authorization after the arson investigation. His attorney said that statement made it seem as if Diddy had something to do with that. That motion was denied by a judge. To break this all down, let's bring in former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. Now, Nima, some of the points that the investigators hit today seem to go towards the predicate crimes, which you need for racketeering. They talked about robbery. They talked about arson. Can you first just kind of briefly explain what predicate crimes are and if you think that they've been established or are on the way there?
Of course, Sophia. So when you're dealing with RICO or racketeering, you need a few things. You need a criminal enterprise. And typically people think of the mob or street gangs or the drug cartels, but it can be something much looser. It can be Bad Boy Records with Sean Diddy Combs at the head of the organization, right? Really, it's any loose association of 2 or more people. You have to have an agreement to do something unlawful. That's the conspiracy part of it, whether it's a RICO conspiracy or another type of conspiracy. You do need that. And of course, you can have unindicted co-conspirators. So Combs can be agreeing with people who aren't charged, which is what we're seeing here, to do something unlawful. And then you also need that pattern of racketeering activity. So that means you need 2 or more RICO predicate acts over a 10-year period. Now, of course, sex trafficking is a RICO predicate act, but what makes the statute so powerful is that you can get to RICO even if you don't prove sex trafficking if you're the government. So let's take a step back. Let's say the jurors believe that Cassie's freak-offs were actually consensual, that there was no force, fraud, or coercion. You can actually get to RICO through arson. You can get there through kidnapping. You can get there through extortion or witness intimidation, prostitution, bribery. So the fact that we're hearing evidence of all these other crimes does allow the government to possibly get to racketeering, even if they can't prove sex trafficking.
Okay, so it looks like there's different paths to the same goal. That's kind of what they're trying to do.
Exactly. And that's why the arson in this case, we're spending so much time on Kid Cudi's car. And you had investigator Jimenez today talking about the arson and the Molotov cocktail. That's why
Right.
all that is so incredibly important because, of course, sex trafficking is probably the most serious crime because it can carry mandatory minimum sentence of up to 15 years to potentially life. But racketeering, you can also get a potential life sentence as well. Even though you don't have those mandatory minimums, you don't have those floors, the ceiling is still there, and the judge can consider a lot of evidence when you're looking at racketeering.
Let's get back to the witnesses explaining what happened to them as employees and also what would bring more RICO charges.
It is Thursday, day 12 in the Diddy trial, and we hear from victim number 4 today, and boy, does she have some details. First, back on the stand is Deontay Nash, and he says that Cassie did start communicating with actor Michael B. Jordan after her and Sean broke up. During cross-examination, he testified that Cassie never mentioned to him anything about the freak-offs from 2008 to 2013. He said that he remembered seeing Cassie with a black eye. He saw it on video call and in person. He recalled a time when he spotted a random man joining Cassie in her Las Vegas hotel room without Sean there. Next to take the stand is victim number 4, who will only be referred to as Mia, and the judge has instructed them to not even do sketches of her. Mia describes her time working for Sean as chaotic and toxic. The highs were really high and the lows were really low. Puff's mood determined the environment. He threw things at me. He threw me against the wall. He threw me in the pool. He threw stuff at my head. He sexually assaulted me, and on more than one occasion. She said she worked for Sean from 2009 to 2017. She applied when she was only 25 years old. She was promised a compensation of $55,000, but ended up only being paid $50,000. She testified that once she worked 5 days straight without sleeping. We were traveling Las Vegas. There was always things going on. She says, I had a physical breakdown. My hearing went. It felt like I was underwater. My equilibrium was off, blurred vision. Out of nowhere, I was hysterical. I couldn't stop crying. Puff said she should go to sleep. She testified that when she traveled with Sean or stayed at his properties, she was not allowed to lock the door. Puff said, this is my house and no one locks the doors. Although she remembers the rule didn't seem to apply to the predominantly male security team that stayed in rooms with deadbolts and keypads. Mia says she managed Sean's social media presence, served as a liaison between Sean and Hollywood, managed his daily routines, and kept him on schedule. She said she had to stay attached to her BlackBerry and within eyesight of Sean and anticipate his needs and his moods. Every day was different. It could be 17,000 things at one time, from doing taxes to writing his next movie. He could also want you to just stand next to him for 24 hours and not ask you to do one thing. Mia says her and Cassie grew close, became like sisters and best friends. They still keep in contact today. She says that her and Sean, Cassie and Sean, had a rocky relationship with lots of highs and lows that often included abuse from Sean. She says that when Cassie was filming the movie The Perfect Match, Sean would often be on set and insert himself into production. She was asked what would happen when she did something without Sean's permission, her or Cassie, and she said the punishment was unpredictable and terrifying. If Cassie didn't pick up the phone when Sean called, multiple people would call and text her, and security would show up if they couldn't find her. She said she saw Cassie with injuries. She also saw Sean attack Cassie and throw her on the ground. I've seen him crack her head open. She did not recall ever seeing Cassie fight back. Mia recalled a time she found Cassie hiding in the bushes, terrified look in her eyes, trying to hide from Sean. Mia recalled the time her and Deontay were at Cassie's helping her pack for a trip. Sean showed up banging on the door, came in screaming at Cassie, asking her if she's been drinking. threw her to the ground. She says her and Deontay immediately jumped in and tried to stop it. We were both just trying to get him off her. At some point, he had Deontay in a position where I was scared he was going to kill him. I jumped on his back. Nash testified about this same incident yesterday. She says he threw me against the wall so easily and quickly I realized we were in real danger. He then slammed Cassie's head into the corner of the bed and it was gushing blood. After all of this took place, he then told Mia to get in touch with a plastic surgeon to fix up the gash in Cassie's head. Prosecutors asked Mia to describe how Sean appeared during the incident. She said his eyes turned black. There was like no getting through to him. I was trying to get him to stop, and it was like he was looking through me. She realized the severe danger that we were actually in. At this point, they take a break for lunch. Mia's going to be back on the stand after the break. Make sure you're following me. I'll post that recap later on. It is Thursday, day 12 in the Diddy trial.
These court transcripts are all public record, but you can also find them on Twitter and Inner City Press.
Make sure you do your homework when looking at these videos because I've ended up down countless rabbit holes thanks to AI. If people saying stuff like Ice Cube came into the courtroom and gave evidence, or this person came to the courtroom, or Prince left a video beyond the grave that just emerged into the courtroom.
You said to me, I've heard that Ice Cube's going to be in courtroom.
Yeah,
Like,
and,
all
and it
right.
was fake. It was fake. We verify everything that
Mm.
we do post with court transcripts. Trust me, I'm up to like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning verifying what we're posting against court transcripts.
So let's hear more about these details from a lawyer's point of view.
I believed that Puff's authority was above the police. Mia, Combs' former assistant and alleged victim, is still on the stand. I'm an attorney and I read what happened, so you don't have to. Part 1 is already up, so let's get into it. Mia described Combs as being completely in control of Cassie's career. She testified that he always made the final decisions and that his control covered what music would be put out, the visual aspects of the music videos, her appearance, when she would be in the studio, and any sort of shows or promotions or videos that she could be a part of. Mia testified that she often sat in on meetings about Cassie's career and handled the communications between Combs and others in his label. Mia also testified that Cassie's movements were heavily restricted. She said, "We weren't allowed to go where we wanted when we wanted." She testified that if they did, something bad, very scary would happen. Mia told the jury that Combs would often dictate when she could even spend time with Cassie, and that when she was with Cassie, he would ask Mia to send him photos of Cassie's hair, outfit, nails, and more for approval. Mia also testified that she regularly saw injuries on Cassie's body. She recalled bruises on her body, fat lips, black eyes, and gash on her forehead. She recalled one incident where Combs slammed Cassie's head into the edge of the bed, where then Cassie started gushing blood. Mia testified that Combs told her to call a plastic surgeon and tell him that Cassie was drunk and fell. Mia testified, "I thought that was the only way to get her help, and because Puff told me to." When asked about his demeanor at the time, Mia testified, "His eyes turned black like he was looking through me." Mia then moved on to describing a public incident, a party hosted by Prince in 2010. Mia testified that Combs had found out that her and Cassie had gone without his permission. He caught Cass, had her on the ground, and started attacking her, but Prince's security swiftly intervened. She testified that she was suspended the next day without pay for being insubordinate. Mia also recalled a 2012 trip to Turks and Caicos. She testified that Cassie ran into her room screaming, "He's going to me," and then they began barricading the door with furniture. But eventually they had to flee to the beach. They grabbed paddleboards and tried to escape by sea, but then the weather started getting worse. And Mia recalled that they even debated, is it scary to face Mother Nature or go back to Puff? When asked why she didn't report what she saw, Mia testified, "I believed Puff's authority was above the police." Mia is expected to remain on the stand through the end of tomorrow, so make sure to come back for the next part and let me know if you have any comments or questions down below.
All in all, I say this to explain a bigger picture, though DV should never lead with the word just ever in front of it. It should never be just DV. But there are more charges other than DV.
We're hearing the word just a little bit
Way
too
too much.
Just DV, just coercion, just
Blowing up people's cars.
Just.
Just.
So the next clip we're going to play is from the wonderful Brett Cooper, which will explain what we're talking about.
About everything with Justin and how this industry operates, that Diddy is just the tip of the iceberg. And most people out there, including myself, do not believe that he acted alone, not just with his freak-offs, but with the degradation of this industry as a whole. I mean, think about all the names that we just mentioned in those 63 lawsuits. And guys, interestingly, there is one person that just keeps getting brought up time and time again, and he also just keeps getting away with it. And that man would be Clive Davis, the aging, very much aging, co-founder of Bad Boy Records. Now, before we get into how insane this story is and giving you the backstory, I just need to paint a picture for you, because when all of this started, this was a very, very different time. So imagine that we are all in the 70s, and the government has just begun cracking down on organized crime because the RICO Act was signed into law in 1970. So why did this act come about? Well, the mafia had infiltrated all of the big industries, and the music industry for the mafia was a no-brainer, including jukebox plays, record sales, nightclub entry fees, and it gave mob bosses the ability to control and extort labels and artists through these avenues, including distribution through jukeboxes, control of the venues where artists got to perform. All of that, they had their hands in everything. And another part of this, something that the mob also had their hands in, was referred to as indies. Now, these indies were people, and they were people who were hired by labels to secure airplay for songs, often using cash and gifts, drugs, or other incentives that would get the radio stations to play these certain songs. And this was not something that the record labels were doing overtly. They had to do this through third parties because this was actually illegal. It was illegal to pay for airtime without disclosing it, and this was called payola. So now that you have that context, we can introduce you to Clive Davis. Now, this is the man that is behind some of the world's most iconic bands and artists throughout the entire music industry, and he is also the man behind Diddy's rise. I mean, this man has worked with everybody from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, Santana, Billy Joel, Bruce Springsteen, Aerosmith, Earth, Wind & Fire, Neil Diamond, my personal favorite. I used to fall asleep to him every single night growing up, Pink Floyd, Whitney Houston, Alan Jackson, Brooks and Dunn, Brad Paisley, Usher, Outkast, and Pink. But, you know, in the 70s, he was the music industry. If you were somebody who was working with Clive Davis, it was almost a sure bet that you were going to be successful. Now, Clive started his career at Columbia Records, and he quickly rose to the top because of his talent and his eye for music, and all thanks to Clive Davis himself. Columbia Records was a powerhouse in the 70s, and their revenue was up significantly. One article from around that time says that rock has moved from only 15% of Columbia's volume to more than 50%, and CBS record sales have risen from 170 million to 340 million each year. Clive Davis, was able to win over top talent by paying well and offering considerable artistic freedom. John Phillips of the Mamas and Papas said, quote, "He always sent the limousines and the flowers at the right time." So everything for Clive and Columbia Records was looking up. The music industry was changing daily, all thanks to Clive. And then in May, in 1973, Clive Davis was abruptly fired after a Columbia Records internal investigation. Now, Columbia has publicly stated that the reason for the termination of his contract early was that he was misappropriating funds. But everyone in the music industry who was clued in that knew Clive knew that it had to be more than that. Take a look at this Time article from 1973. They said, others in the records business where expense money is thrown around doubted that the CBS charges against Davis could be the full explanation. To them, the action against Davis seems unduly harsh in an industry that abounds in stories of much worse transgressions, chiefly the providing of drugs to rock groups and disc jockeys. Quote, "If we had somebody really important who wanted dope, we would probably give it to him," says a vice president of one of CBS's biggest competitors. "I think Davis is taking the rap for everybody." Now, in addition to all of that and those theories, looking through news articles from around the time, it is very obvious that Columbia was being investigated for payola, as this internal investigation was happening with Clive Davis. In fact, here's a headline from that year that reads, "Clive Davis ousted, payola cover-up charge. Columbia Records president is fired from CBS amid allegations of misuse of funds and providing drugs to artists and disc jockeys." Now, the rumor at the time, and sort of still is that Columbia used Davis as a cover-up so that the company would not be investigated further. This man was the fall guy. They were basically saying there was nothing to see here. Yes, our president was funneling money, but that was just for personal reasons. Nothing to see here. He was most definitely not working with the mafia, doing payola, or supplying people with drugs. And guys, you also need to understand how big being charged with payola with something like this could have been. Like, Columbia Records would not have survived that scandal. And again, this was not something that was hush-hush. Another article from around the time reads that the government is probing an elaborate scheme in which Columbia and perhaps other record companies may have been bilked of many millions of dollars. Columbia Records alone reportedly lost $2 million. Investigators are trying to find out whether the mafia had got a firm foothold in the record industry or whether Columbia Records scandal was an isolated incident. Now here is where the mafia ties really begin. So a month before Clive was fired, one of his employees, one of his close associates, was also fired for misappropriation of funds, and his office was interestingly sealed for investigation. And this man had been more directly linked to the mob, specifically the Genovese crime family. And it's all written about in another article from 1973. So this one reads, the first rumors had begun to fly during, quote, a week to remember. David Winshaw, 52, vice president of artist relations at Columbia, had been busted. He had been locked out of his 12th floor office a couple of weeks ago, and there was talk about prostitution and drugs. The FBI, the rumors said, had invaded CBS's Black Skyscraper and seized files from Winshaw's office, and CBS had cordoned off the room and fired the 11-year veteran. Winshaw, it was said, was close to Clive Davis and was variously known around the company and in the business as Davis's royal procurer or Clive's pimp or the all-around Dr. Feelgood. He had, the hearsay went, been moved over to special projects and took care of conventions, providing any necessary entertainment for Columbia executives and favored guests. Now he, David Winshaw, unlike Clive, did serve a year in prison, and his story seemed to kind of die down there until 2021 when Winshaw gave another interview. And in this interview, he said that everyone knew he took the fall for Clive Davis. Federal investigators who had launched an ultimately fruitless search for evidence of payola would allege that Winshaw had conspired with a member of the Genovese crime family to defraud CBS of $75,000 through sham bills from non-existent companies, a scheme that earned Winshaw a 1-year jail sentence. Nobody has suggested that Davis knew a thing about the involvement of the mob, though skeptics contend that a micromanager like Clive Davis had to know about the invoices that Winshaw drafted. According to Winshaw, there is little doubt on the matter. Now 80 years old and living in Florida, he said in a brief phone interview that, quote, everyone knows I took the fall for Davis. How does a man run a bar mitzvah that he doesn't know about? The circumstances of his exit, Winshaw says, ruined me, though he still admires Davis's talents. I have no animosity. The guy doesn't want to know me. That's fine. Looking back, some former colleagues say that CBS got spooked by the payola investigation and jettisoned Davis, hoping to mollify the government and stave off penalties that might jeopardize its broadcasting licenses. And guys, the reason why I did this entire history lesson on the music industry in the 70s and Clive Davis and Columbia Records is because it is simply so wild to me that while David served a year in prison for all of this, Clive walked away free and maintained his career. And then, many years later, in 1994, he fatefully started Bad Boy Records with none other than P. Diddy. Now, to bring it all back to the case at hand and the freak-offs, we don't know how involved Clive was with Diddy's affairs. We can just put it that way. But we do know that Clive was responsible for starting Diddy's career and that they were very close friends. And so it's fair and it's very valid for all of us to wonder why and how P. Diddy was able to get away with all of these crimes for so long and what led him down such a dark, twisted path. And it's just interesting, whether it's related to Diddy's cover-ups or not, that his mentor, his confidant, his close friend, his business partner, was tied to one of the biggest payola scandals in music industry history and has walked away scot-free from crimes, also including tax evasion, for his entire very long life. And I mean, hey, maybe Diddy just learned from the best. Now, while a lot of this is unverified, a lot of people think that it goes even deeper than that, even darker than that. A lot of people in the music industry have spoken out about this relationship. For example, Suge Knight, who is a rapper who is in prison for manslaughter, has claimed multiple times over the years that music executives, including Clive Davis, have used sexual abuse, drugs, and alcohol to control their artists. Take a listen to this clip from a recent interview he did with Chris Cuomo.
To me, that sounds like what I hear when people are talking about abusive situations, hurt people, that someone was sexually abused, they wind up being a perpetrator. Is that what you're suggesting about Sean Combs, that he was sexually abused and he now sexually abuses?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think he repeat what was done to him. And like I said, if you look at Russell Simmons, you know the truth. Andre Rail, you know the truth. Clive Davis, you know the truth. Jimmy Iovine, you know the truth. The industry is a quick business. It's been like that for a long time. And the casting couch is real, but is for women and men.
And throughout this interview, which was done 7 months ago, he offered horrifying examples of what that looked like. For example, Knight claimed that Diddy was, quote, taught by the people before him, and he did to the younger people after him. Quote, it is an industry that, according to Knight, has a long history of sexually abusing and assaulting its newest members. He said one practice called an egg test went as follows. And just for warning, this is insane. But he says, quote, those guys pull their pants down and bent over. They stick the egg up their ass, their eggs break. They say they're not ready yet. They ain't put enough work in. This is Hollywood. And then he goes on to say that the only place where you would put in the work so that your egg wouldn't break was at these types of parties. It's like, guys, it's so insane. And yet we're hearing this from so many people. Like, at this point, it can't be a conspiracy that this is how Hollywood and these entertainment industries run. And guys, in every one of these stories, from people other than just Suge Knight, in every story, Clive Davis gets brought up. His influence even made its way to Sean Ryan's podcast. Now, of course, over the years, Clive Davis's team has denied all of these allegations. They say that he knew nothing, that he was never involved, and these days, he plays the role of the geriatric old man who just won't answer questions.
A lot of people are curious about the status of P. Diddy.
Status of what?
P. Diddy. Diddy.
Puppy. The status of puppy.
But as we've learned from Justin Bieber and others like him, the abuse and the blackmail and the control happening within the music industry and Hollywood runs deep.
With all of that being said, thank you for grabbing a brew with us today, and join us next week for week 4 of Diddy Did It.
Don't forget to email us with reaction videos, creepy, strange, or funny, to grabyourbrew@gmail.com. And don't forget to label them so we don't have any more mishaps.
I'm going to leave that down.
I have to add that every time now.
Today we did have a glitch, but in my defense, it was a computer error, not me error. But please like and subscribe. Bye.
Bye.